Hi everybody, welcome to Great Questions, Great Conversations. It's a podcast here at St. Paul's and the Bridge in Muskego, Wisconsin, where we have a chance to be able to talk with folks who are I like to say, moving and shaking or have some deep thoughts in the world that we live in from a Christian perspective. And I'm excited today because I got a chance to talk with Coach Ken Krause, who is part of the Muskego school systems, Muskego High School, very successful football coach. I would say one of the top football programs, because it's consistently programs in our state, and the values that he has, and it's just, I'm looking forward to just having a chance to just talk. So we're just going to have a conversation. Coach, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yep.
Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into coaching, and then when did you start in Muskego? If you remember those years, all those years.
For sure. When I was 16 years old, I was playing high school football at West Dallas Central, and unfortunately, my dad passed away.
Oh, at 16.
And 16, yeah. So it was really tough, and that was going to my junior in football. And mentors are a big thing, and so my coaches kind of became like my father figures, and they had just a great impact on my football coaches, my wrestling coaches, just really helped me through that time, and that started to make me think about maybe being a coach and being a mentor to someone. And then in college, I worked at a playground. I worked with kids from 3 years old through 8th grade, and I absolutely loved it. I could tell that was my gift. I felt like that's what God put me on earth to do, is be a teacher, be a coach.
Yeah.
And then I went and got a teaching degree in special ed and history. And while I was in college, I started coaching football at my alumni mater, West Dallas Central. And when I started coaching at 19 years old, coached freshman, then I coached the JV, then I moved to varsity, and then I graduated from college, got a teaching job at West Dallas Central, was the offensive coordinator for 1 year, and our head coach resigned. And I do believe in God, and God puts us in places. And he resigned. I was 23, and I ended up applying for the job and got the job at a young age. And so I was head coach there 11 years, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of great success. And then we moved out to the Muskego Norway School District in 2003, and I had one child at the time, and then I had my second child, and in 2005 we had twins. So I was driving by the high school every day, and again, God, I never thought I'd leave West Dallas. I was always planning on that's where I grew up, and I thought I'd be the head coach there forever. And, but he was pulling me in the direction of looking at Muskego as a job. And so I gave up being the head football coach at West Dallas Central, thinking at Muskego I would just, I was applying for a teaching job and wouldn't be head coach ever again, just coach my kids in their youth sports and be at all our activities. And I assisted that first year as a football coach at Muskego. And again, I believe in God, and I believe things happen for a reason. And he resigned, and a bunch of players and families and coaches reached out to me like, we'd really like you to be the next head coach. And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, I think this was meant to be. Yeah. This is really crazy. If I was gonna be head coach anywhere, this is the only place, because my kids are in the school system, and because that was the reason I left West Dallas, is family. Family's always first. And so God wanted me to continue to coach. And so here we are 18 years later. I've been head coach from Muskego 18 years. I don't know where the time has gone. So I'm just super blessed. The community is phenomenal, and the support. And, as you'd mentioned earlier, we've had a lot of success, and it's been a lot of fun. So God, both times. I could get more detail, but really God wanted me to be head coach, wanted me to be a teacher, just based on where he put me and where I traveled. And so
it's funny, isn't it? Sometimes you don't know it at the time, but the stones that God is putting to build the path that we're going to walk on. Yep. And then you look at it and you go, how could I not be here without God? But I don't know about you. So many young people that I'll talk to, like when you're 21, like, what do you want to do with your life? Right. What do you want to be? Like, almost all of us have the story of, well, I'm not doing what I thought I would do at 21.
Right.
Or how I got here is so much different than what I ever thought it was going to be.
And it's very true, because when I was 21, I didn't think I'd be head football coach at 23. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't think that I would ever leave West Dallas, and then I did. And look where we are, 18 years later. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. God has a plan for you, and you just follow it, and things happen. And
And I love what you're talking about too. It's literally take the step in front of you.
Yep.
That I don't know about you, but sometimes when that door doesn't feel like it's opening, just stopping and and waiting and the patience. But then all of a sudden there's a step, like you mentioned, a resignation a couple times, all of a sudden there's a door that just simply opens up and you happen to be standing on the step right in front of that door.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I really do. I always tell people all the time that that's where God wanted me to be. He wanted me to be a teacher. He wanted me to be a coach. He wanted me to mentor people, help people, and that's where I get my fulfillment. And when you are a head coach, you do have an opportunity to impact a lot more people. You impact your coaches, you impact your players, you impact all the people that work with you. So I'm very blessed, that's for sure.
I'm going to step back into this part of the conversation. What you mentioned, your father passing away at 16, somewhat similar to my dad. His dad passed away when he was about 10.
Sure.
But he had diabetes. This is back in the 50s when they didn't know what to do with it. So it's kind of like a dementia situation. And he wound up finding his way into coaching, which wound up being a big part of my life.
Yep.
I was the last guy cut my freshman and sophomore year in basketball. So I was going to play football, but my mom was like, well, you could get hurt, basketball, whatever. But that being cut from that basketball team was probably one of the most pivotal moments in my life, because it put me in the proximity of working with my dad, 5th and 6th grade boys, trying to figure out how to help them. And my dad's heart moved, kind of like what you said. He didn't have a dad growing up. And all of a sudden he started seeing the boys, especially a couple of them who he knew had really tough family lives. And all of a sudden this coaching thing wasn't about winning a basketball game and being the coach. It had something way more. And he talked about football coaches being the mentor in his life. So this is an off-script question.
Sure.
As I look at young men today, so many are oftentimes begging for a male role model figure. What have you seen from coaches who have held that mantle well? What are the characteristics of a mentor in our day and age today that from your perspective?
Yeah, I think today's world, there's so much research on it, and it really is godlike, be a servant leader. And it really is what Jesus was. And so the big buzzword in the coaching profession is servant leadership. But really it's what Jesus did for us. So it's pretty ironic. Where I think back, earlier was more the coaches were more dictators. You do what I say, no matter what, don't argue with me, just do what I do. And now I think today's leadership, I think the most successful coaches, I believe, and we've instilled that at Muskego, is we're serving our players. We're trying to help them become better people. And so we teach our players to be servant leaders as well. So like our seniors are serving our sophomores. They're teaching them how to practice, how to play. So we've filtered that style into our entire program. And I think that comes back to Christianity, comes back to Jesus. Jesus was the best servant leader there was. And so that is the buzzword currently in leadership, I think. And I know Muskego, we do a great job of that right now. And I think that's one of the reasons for our success.
As a coach, how do you balance that idea of servant leadership with, I played football, and I was grateful for the coaches who were able to help me do hard things.
Right.
So how do you balance that idea of servant leadership? But this is a football game. This is going to be a physical sport.
Right.
You're going to do things that you're going to see a guy who's 50 pounds bigger than you, and you still got to stick that block.
Right.
How do you balance that need for a toughness and that servant leadership?
Tough love and accountability.
Okay.
I'm going to coach you hard, but I'm going to love you harder. So we do coach our kids hard at Muskego. We coach them very hard. We have high expectations. We hold them to a standard. So what's great about football, it's such an effort sport. You can block to the whistle. You can carry out your fake. You can run to a football. So those are the things that we are tough on, effort and attitude. So I think it's another big strength of Muskego. And you asked me to be on here because of our success. I think our success has been because we demand effort and positive attitude. And those are the things that people can control. So that's when we're tough on them. But we'll love them harder. And when we see them doing that, we're going to be extra enthusiastic and extra proud of them. And so we try to really highlight that. We definitely are, and football is. I mean, it's typical of Muskego. Our running backs are typically blocking bigger guys, but that's what we expect. And you got to hold them for 3 to 5 seconds tops. Can you give everything you have for 3 to 5 seconds, for every 30 seconds? And it's such a unity sport because you got to do it for each other. You got to block for him, and now you're getting the football, you got to block for him. So yeah, I think we do a good job. But like you said, we balance the act of loving them, but we coach them hard, but we love them harder.
I like that. When you've got somebody who's kind of straying, just having a hard time getting with that part of the program, I love that idea, effort and positive attitude.
Yep.
I mean, those are, like you said, those are the things that you can control.
Yep.
Your effort, your attitude. How do you handle the kids who are having a little harder time understanding what you're trying to get to?
I think in today's world, it's one-on-one conversations. I think when I first started coaching, I don't know if it was the right way of handling things, but we would maybe yell at them in front of their teammates and try to motivate them that way. Nowadays, I think we've changed our coaching style that we still hold high standards in front of the team, but if I do see an athlete sort of strain, I check in with them. Is there anything going on in your personal life? Sometimes athletes or people, they're not being lazy or not going to have a bad attitude because maybe something happened at home on the way to practice. Maybe some of their families, got cancer. Maybe the parents are having some issues. So, one thing that I've tried to mentor my younger coaches and myself is just when an athlete's not giving their best effort, doesn't have a positive attitude, instead of screaming at in front of the whole team, pull them aside, talk to them. And it's interesting how many times there is something going on.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then you have that conversation about, if you're going to be part of the team, this is the standard. This is what we expect out of you. And, how do you want me to coach you when you're not doing that? And we also videotape practice.
Okay.
And so when we do team offense or team defense, we share it the next day with our players. And so we will put notes on there, and we will praise things that we want repeated, but we also will put notes on there if we don't see great effort. So there's a lot of peer pressure there too. They don't want to be in front of their film. We always say the film doesn't lie.
Right.
So if you're not hustling and you're sitting there in front of your team, there's some good pressure of, okay, I don't want to be called out for that tomorrow. So
Yeah. That is funny. I mean, a video recording. I can remember one of my sons when they were really young. They were frustrated with a video game, and I was having a hard time getting through to them. And I finally just got the phone out and just let it go. And very quickly was like, I'm frustrated, and it stop.
Right, right.
And all of a sudden it's like, no, because I know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Even for us when we're in the band, looking back at things like how can we be a little less stiff? How can we communicate better?
Yeah.
Are there words that I can say that are a little bit better? I want to ask a leader question that maybe is a little bit more personal. As leaders, we have our good days, we have our bad days. At the time of this airing, you had a game last night that certainly would send you home going,
Oh, yeah.
But have you ever been in a season where life has just been a challenge for you? All of us can deal with challenges, whether it's a depression or just stuff that comes back, some of the demons in our past that haunt us. How do you surround yourself with people to keep you on task? Who do you go to when life just starts to fall off the rails? How do you handle that part of things for yourself?
One thing I do besides finding people is I read a lot. So I find really good motivational books. Being a coach, I read a lot about attitude and being positive. So I try to do that every day. I try to wake up in the morning, and at some point in the morning, I try to do a little reading. And I can tell when I do the reading that it puts me in a better frame of mind. I also have a goal every day to, I get out my cell phone and I always type in 3 things I'm grateful for from the previous day. And that puts me in a better mood instantaneously.
Wow.
And then I also put one goal for the day. So I always try to have a family goal, a coaching goal, something I did positive type goal. And, whether it's, a spiritual goal or working with kids or working with your family. And then I always have my 4th spot is, what do I do better? So that's been a good pick me up. So when you are having tough days, that's a good way to just get in a good mood instantaneously. Mm-hmm. And I try to tell my athletes the same thing, I mean, if you're having a bad day or a bad moment, you could get out a piece of paper and write 10 things you're happy for in your life, and you're gonna get in a better mood right away. So I think that's one thing I share with the athletes. Occasionally I've done that too. If you're going through a rough period and you're like, all of a sudden you list 10 things that are going good, you all of a sudden go, oh, my life's not as bad as I thought it was. So I think that's real research based, and I know it's helped me personally, and I do promote that with my athletes as well.
Yeah.
Being grateful for what you have.
Gratitude.
Because sometimes you just get so caught up on all the things that aren't going well, that you don't realize how many things are still going well.
Who would you say are mentors for you in this season of your life?
I've got some older. I got a former coach, Coach Take. He lives up in Boston. He ran the same offense I do. He's a great influence. I do think you need to have mentors. You have to have people you can go to.
Yep.
So when you are struggling, I think successful people find mentors in their field. So I do have some mentors in my field that I go to. So he's a big mentor. Guys in my coaching staff, I'm really close with my coaches, and I've got some guys. And now as I get older, it's not just always talking to older people, but you can learn a lot from younger people. And so I've got some really good young coaches on my coaching staff who they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I steal things from them. And I think one thing that I try to do is I steal anything from anybody. I don't care if what your job is, what you do. If you're having a positive attitude or you're just doing positive things, like, I'm going to steal that from whoever. I can learn from anybody.
Yep.
And so I've read that, and it's sunk in my brain. So when I was younger, it was a lot more older people, but now that I'm creeping in age, I'm really trying to keep up with what younger people get motivated by.
Yeah.
I never want people to say that I'm not adapting, and so I'm constantly learning how the next generation operates, and so I'm trying to keep up with the times and keep up with technology stuff, and so it's been fun.
Yeah.
You can never think that you know everything. I think once you think you know everything is when you know nothing. Yeah. And so you have to, and that's what you learn as you get older, that you really don't know anything.
No.
And things constantly keep changing, technology and just philosophies and research things. It's just, so you have to just constantly, like I said earlier, I do a lot of reading. I just try to keep up. I try to read every day. I don't always get to because we're all so busy, but I try to just keep reading things in my field and try to stay ahead of the game. And I always try to attend a few workshops, clinics in the off season. Mm-hmm. I also try to get together with people that I respect, or maybe I've never met with them, but I'll reach out to them and talk to them about things they're doing and just take what fits me in our program.
There's a couple different ways I want to take this conversation. One, I do want to take it to church. There's a reason why we're talking to you. Exactly. That from my perspective as director of worship operations, and just, as we're thinking about the future with a new building coming online, and there's both really exciting things, and there's also some real potential pitfalls in those kinds of things. So I'll talk about that in a second. But I want to step into one thing that you just said, because I work with young adults. I've been doing that for pushing on 20 years. Yep. I agree everything that you've said. Yeah, there's so much that we can learn. I found that oftentimes a healthy mentorship relationship is that I might be a mentor for a season to that younger person, but over time, there's an equilibrium that kind of hits where you all of a sudden you're going to that person to help give perspective. So what is this younger generation coming up right now? And I've asked a couple of younger people this specific question. What do the older generation, what are we not talking about that a younger generation is just wishing that an older generation would lean into?
I think there's a lot more mental health in our world. I think the younger generation is doing a lot more mental health. And I don't know if it's because of social media, because people go on Facebook and people only post what's going on well, and then people feel like their life's depressing because, why look at how successful they are. And people can be very negative on social media. People people can say something and you move on, but when it's on there and you can reread it. So I think the younger generation is crying out for mental health. Just they need people positive. They need to be cheered on. They need to be. I think the younger generation wants ownership of things. I don't think they want to be micromanaged. I think they want to. That can be true of everyone, but I think the younger group want work-life balance. I think they've grown up in a little different era where they still work hard, but they want to be able to. I think research is saying you need to have time to decompress in that, and maybe people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, work hard, and maybe you're a dad and you don't ever...
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Right, exactly, and so I think the next generation is understanding how important you have to have work-life balance too, and I think companies and businesses that understand that, I think, are the ones that are becoming more successful. I also feel like younger people move around a lot. It's hard to keep people at the same job for a while. I think they move a lot, and so I think if you're in charge of a company or business or program, you're trying to find ways to keep them in your program if they're good.
Yeah.
Unless they're trying to move up to a higher position somewhere, but. keep your good employees if you can.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why we're having this conversation is that as our congregation moves online, there's more opportunities to serve, and we are, much like a football program, really any sports program, it's volunteer. You're not getting paid for it, even in the college level, despite what NIL says. Most kids aren't getting paid to play a sport. Well, in the world of church, we are a very large not-for-profit organization, which means that we rely on functioning because people see the mission, they see the vision, why we exist, and the better that we can be a part of telling that story is huge. Now, of course, in the church, it's the Jesus story. Let Jesus be our number one story. Let the hope of Christ be the thing that dwells in our hearts and motivates us. But to your point, I think when Jesus was saying, let the light shine, part of that idea of bringing his glory to the world is that the principles exist in the way that I do my work. When I was at UWM, I talked about servant leadership as well. I like to describe it being humble enough to learn and confident enough to lead, and the wisdom to find the balance. And so we would, every once in a while, I remember talking with one university administrator, and we sat down, I explained it, and they go, oh, you're talking about Jesus leadership. I don't know if this person was a Christian or not, but here I am in a secular university going, sweet.
Yeah, perfect.
That's the glory of God going out into the world to say, yes, there's a reason for this to be done this way. So in relation to the next couple questions I'm asking from the standpoint of learning from you who's been blessed to build a successful, sustainable program that demands from people and yet has excellent buy-in. I'm looking at an opportunity for us here at St. Paul's and the Bridge as we enter into a new space. One of my concerns, and we have said this before because when we deconstructed the old church building to honor the past in a different way, we made the comment that this is that the church is not a building; it is the people of God gathered in His name. That is what the church is. That's the ecclesia. Well, when you build a beautiful building, guess what? A whole bunch of people say, "What church do you go to?" And they start seeing the church as the building again. And so as we look at making sure that the building doesn't become the vision, that the building doesn't become the mission, and then we're working hard as leaders to make sure that that doesn't happen, it's an easy thing to get mixed up in. We can get lazy there. When you look at the vision and the mission of your program, every year to compete with excellence, and again, God's blessed you with success, how do you keep that vision and mission in front of your kids? I'm wondering about it from your standpoint as coaches, and then you mentioned it before. You've got players who are also on board helping develop that. How do you keep the vision of the program in front of people as a coach and with your players?
I'm not sure I'm going to answer exactly how, but I guess the way I've done it at Muskego is just get the right people on the bus, put people in positions of strength, delegate things. I think people like to have some ownership of things, but they also want to do things that they're good at.
Yes.
And I think you don't, Mike, I think you give them training, and you need to put the right people doing the right jobs. And then occasionally you have to take a job away from someone if that's not a good fit, but give them some training, and then don't micromanage them. Let them do it and trust them, and still check in, still have some expectations, some goals, and still have some conversation pieces. But I think the more people that can be involved and the more leaders you can develop, if it's just you always leading, that's a problem. So the more leaders you can develop in your organization. So I know, like for Muskego, I've got a lot of great leaders, and I've delegated a lot, and I think that's kept people wanting to stay with me. And we've had the same staff for a long time, and so I think they all feel like they're contributing in their zone.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of research that when you want people to be working in their comfort zone. Like, what are they good at? Let's give people what they're good at, because when people are doing jobs they're not good at, then that's when they tend to leave. Like, this isn't my strength. I don't enjoy this. So how do I find people? So I think with our church, my advice is just, we're looking for volunteerism. Who in our church has these different skill sets, and you may have to reach out to them. And sometimes they don't think about it, and then you ask them, oh yeah, I'll do this, and then they end up enjoying the job, and then they feel like they get some personal fulfillment because the gifts that God gave them, they're able to do because that's what they're good at, you know. So that would be one suggestion I'd have, you know. And like we talked about the mentorship with the older athletes, with the younger athletes, just being humble enough to know that I'm gonna serve the younger players. So I don't know if this fits with what we're talking about, but like at practice, we always have the starters put the gear away, and not the sophomores, not someone that we call our scout team the win team. We don't call them the scout. We call them the win team. Like the better the win team performs, the better they make you. The better they make us. So you know, we're constantly looking for genuine ways to praise everyone in our program, not just our starters.
That's so good, and I love it. I want to talk about culture a little bit.
Yeah.
I some years ago started to put two and two together, that culture is what actually enables the vision or the mission. You can say you want to go here, but if you don't have a culture, the words and actions, the mantras, the consistency of that, you're never going to actually get there. You get a pseudo of that. And I think honestly sometimes that's one of the dangers in the church, because it's the Christian thing. It's Jesus, which means we be nice to each other, but sometimes you have to have the hard conversations, or you have to set a goal for people, a bar, and sometimes I know for me, I've always struggled with the line between perfectionism and excellence. In our world, perfectionism can make it so that you don't ever want to fail. I know for a lot of the young people, and I was doing meteorology, so imagine, and I'm working with all these young adults, right, who are going to forecast the future for these companies, and these companies are making $10,000 and $50,000 decisions based on what a 22-year-old kid is going to say. And so we're growing up. The difference between 2007, 8 or so when we started to 17, 18, 19, about the time when I stepped out, was they had become much more perfectionistic. And so they were just terrified to make a mistake. So I'd kind of moved toward excellence as doing the very best with what you have. And understanding that the pursuit of excellence means that you have to watch out for the plateau, because as I'm growing, I can then get comfortable, and it's about that time when you want to start looking up again and saying, oh, there's another level. That to me is that pursuit of excellence without getting crazy with perfectionism, which can tank a lot of people. What are some of the culture values that you have, and any mantras that you have that have helped you in your coaching?
Sure. I think number one, it's about us. We've typically found if we're not successful in a game, that it's more what we did wrong than what the opponent did. So we're focusing on our techniques, what we're supposed to do. It's making sure we block with the correct step, put our head in the correct spot. Typically when things don't go well, it's more our mistakes rather than what the opposing team did.
So not playing the victim.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
We talked about effort and attitude. Those are the two things that you can control. So that's where the tough love accountability piece is in. Like, we expect you to give your best effort every single thing you do, and we're going to hold you accountable to it. And we're also going to expect you to have as good of an attitude as you can have. And we're not going to allow bad body language. We're going to stay positive. In front of our peers, and if we're playing a game in front of a couple thousand people, we're going to be. I think those are some of the big mantras that we have. Culture is what you permit. What you allow.
Tell me about that.
So, like, if you allow people to not give their best effort, then other athletes are going to see that. Having standards, and then you have to follow through with what you say. So, for example, just thinking of something recently, like we lift before we practice, and some of our athletes were going to the trainer's room during lifting, and so no, you're going to see the trainer before we lift, because all of a sudden you're missing lifting, which is a big part of to have a long season, we got to get stronger, and so then you can't miss the weight room. And then we had some other guys going in the trainer's room rather than the weight room, and so then it's like, no, the standard is you need to go to the trainer before we lift and before practice. So that'd be like one little example. It's just something recent that happened in our program, but it was kind of neat. The other day I walked into the trainer's room during lifting, there was no one in there. There might have been one kid getting rehab, so it's good. So holding people to a standard. A lot of times, I think people are more motivated too when they help create those standards.
Yeah.
One thing that we've done too that's different. I I've sort of changed. This is kind of research-based again. I haven't been talking about goals as much. We've been talking about standards and commitments. It's not a goal to carry out your fake 20 yards. It's a standard.
Okay.
This is the standard is you do this every time. It's not a goal. This is the standard, you know. So I think that's been a powerful word change that and that's kind of some recent research I've been reading as well, listening to some podcasts of top leaders in our country. Of just, it's good to have a goal, but what's the standard, you know? My goal is to lose 20 pounds, but my standard is, my commitment is I'm not going to eat before I go to bed. So my commitment is I'm not going to eat before I go to bed. My goal is to lose 20 pounds, but my commitment is, how am I going to make that goal? I'm going to commit to myself that I'm going to exercise, 3 days a week, or I'm going to lift 2 days a week. I'm going to not eat before I go to bed. So that's my commitment. That's my standard.
Yeah.
And so we've used that with our players more recently. I think the other thing is just having them help create those standards and commitments. I think when you just tell people what they are, they don't buy into them as much. So I think if you can get people in your organization help create that, now they've got a part of it. And then you tell them, okay, you've created these standards. I'm going to hold you accountable to it now because that's what you wanted them to be. And a lot of times they'll come up with the same things you would have come up anyways with.
Yeah. I was going to ask, how did you do that with your kids? How were they a part of setting some of those commitments and standards?
So I have a leadership council. We meet, it's open any sophomore through senior, and we meet every Monday in the summer because we weightlift on Mondays. And I think it's the best day of the week to have a meeting, set the tone. We do it at 8 a.m. Don't wait till Friday, I read that in a book, Monday morning meeting. So I have my meeting Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And I open up to anybody. I don't care if you're the best player on the team or the worst player on the team. Anybody can be a leader. Anybody.
Yeah.
And so I don't like saying you win when your best leaders are your best players, but you're also trying to make everyone better people.
Yeah.
And try to make your whole organization better. So I open it up to all sophomore through seniors. And so I think this year we had about 107 sophomore through seniors, and I think I had like 60 kids on leadership council.
Wow.
Insane. It's one of the, if people talk about one of the tricks is that, instead of saying I'm only going to put 8 guys on this or 12 guys on this or 1 guy from each position group, if I've got 60 leaders and there's 107 guys in the team, we're going to have a pretty good practice. Yeah. And then what we do is throughout the summer we come up, we do a lot of reading and talking about leadership and traits, but then they come up with the standards. And then, so for example, our first day of football, those 60 kids came up with their standards, and then some kids volunteered, and then they shared the standards with the other kids that weren't part of the leadership council. And they said, so like this year it was like focus, bring the juice, have fun, and 100% effort. So then they would describe to their teammates what they're expecting from that. So it's their goals, it's their standards, they're the one presented to their team. And all I'm doing is enforcing what they came up with.
Okay, that's interesting. So I was going to ask, what was your role in accommodating that? So you mentioned the enforcement. So that's.
But typically they should be enforcing it. To be honest, it should be player led. It should be player led, not coach led.
Right.
There's. It always does work when there's another authority that you can go to. I have found that is when you're the ultimate authority. That's where pride in the moment will oftentimes get us, and then we don't have anywhere to go. It's like that whole idea of the mentor piece of things. But like you said, when it's player-led, that just becomes the standard. That just sets such a strong culture.
That is the culture
for us to get to that point. So you're holding them the accountability to the vision then of the team.
And to be honest with you, I may have maybe oversaid that. Like truthfully, it's pretty rare I have to do that because the seniors or the leadership councils made those standards. So I tell them, if those are your standards, like if your standards give best effort all the time, then we can't be out of practice and you not. Because if you're not giving your best effort, all those kids not on leadership council are they going to assume that that's how they can behave. So this was your goal, and you made the commitment to come every Monday. Like you came every Monday, which they got to get up an hour earlier every week, and that's the standard. So. Then they're expected to do that in their position groups, and then they're training the athletes who weren't there. Like this is our standard, this is our expectation. So we've had this run, and it's been pretty rare that I've had to intervene. Occasionally we've had a situation here or there, but for the most part, the players handle the problems, and that's I think when the program gets to another level is when it's player led, and below average teams nobody leads. good teams, it's coach-led, great teams, player-led. And that's currently how things are going at Muskego, where our players do lead the program.
That's awesome. That's what as a director of workshop operations, it's not like the buck stops with me, but I probably need to continue to work on how can I get this out. I have the idea of, there's a director, but then there's your assistant directors, and how many, who are their people, and how are we getting this? Because the last question I'm going to ask is, we've got to be ready for turnover.
Yeah.
We are going to simply turn over, and even when I was at Innovative Weather, what I found was, even for my assistants to some degree, if they didn't turn over in a timely basis, things started to stagnate under here. And again, it's a much smaller program than what you're doing, but those opportunities for professional development within the context of what we were doing, which was train students to become the kind of meteorologists that were going to become leaders in the places that they were going to go, weather service or whatever. So they would stay after graduation, and they would be my assistant, so I could actually take time off and whatnot, but I would let them into my world a little bit more. But if they didn't leave, I didn't feel the pressure of what these people needed. So it was interesting that there was actually a cadence to turnover, because what I learned the hard way was that if that doesn't happen, then I can get lazy too and take my eye off the ball, assume that these guys got it, but these are still kind of young leaders who don't know how to do some of those things. How do you handle the sustainability of a constantly turning over great leaders, so that you're not just replacing good kids, you're also replacing great players if you're going to compete at the level that you compete in, year in and year out? How does this sustainability happen from your perspective?
Well, coaching staff-wise, I've been able to keep my people. So I think that, if you have great people, you want to keep them.
Yeah.
Player-wise, though, I think that's better. I can answer that better because every year I have different players. So I think the Leadership Council is one example of it. So it's okay, it's the next group of guys, and they're setting their standards, their commitments. So I think you have to have a training program. I've got some coaches that are really into mental training, and Coach Lucchese, Coach Kunik are two of my top assistants, that's for sure. And they work with our kids on that aspect. So then every year some of it's volunteer in the off season, and in season we do it as part of our practice, I guess you could say. But so we're kind of hitting that side of it too. So I think it's having programs where you can train leadership, train how to handle. So our mental training basically to me is, how do you handle adversity? How do you handle things when it's Friday night and we're losing, or it's a fumble, or it's a pick, or they give up a touchdown? How do you stay calm in the moment? How do you handle those? So I think when you have constant turnover, you have to have great training programs in place, and make sure they're getting trained. So player-wise, we do our off-season lifting and running, and then we develop the leadership. We have the leadership program, and we have the mental training program. So I think we do a good job of hitting all three phases. So we get the next group of kids, and some of it's volunteer. We want them to want to do it. Mm-hmm. But some of it is, when it's in season, then it's just, you have to do it. But out of season, it's volunteer. If they want to go to mental training, it's or leadership council, or even lifting, it's volunteer. We kind of have a culture of you go to lift.
Right.
They all lift, but the mental training leadership is a little bit more like in the off season. That's more they have to want to do it. I mean, there are certain things that they have to want to do it to buy in as well. So, but I think that's how we've been able to sustain our success, is having these training programs that we have in place.
Last question. You had mentioned at the top, God got you here. How does your faith hold you in the successes and in the losses? How is that bedrock for you?
It's huge because, like you mentioned, we lost a tough game Friday night, and the first thing I said to myself, God didn't want us to win this game. But we've won some games that maybe we didn't. Maybe something went our way.
Right.
So it kind of evens out in a career, and sometimes you have tough situations, and you're like, I don't understand. Like last year, if we had middle of the season, we had a lot of injuries, and we were struggling to score the ball, and you're just like, you're because you believe in God, you're like, there's a reason for what's going on here, and it allowed some younger athletes, some other people get an opportunity, and then we stayed positive. So I think our kids learned a lot, like just stay positive, because there were certain people kind of being negative about the first time we had been struggling for a while, and there was some people kind of making comments, and so it's kind of the first time our program had dealt with that in maybe ever or a long time. And I think but the hidden blessing is that we stayed positive. We got some healthy guys back, some younger guys got better, and we ended up taking second in state. And there wasn't anybody in the world that was thinking that was going to happen when all that adversity was hitting us. But, you believe in God. And I look back at my life, and there's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't know why that happened at that moment. But then a year or two later, like, okay, there was a reason why that happened. Mm-hmm. And it became a better situation. So sometimes a loss forces you to change something, change maybe a scheme, maybe a philosophy, maybe a coaching style. It forces you to look at things. Maybe you could get stagnant if you keep winning. When you keep winning covers up warts.
Yeah.
You don't realize there's warts because you keep winning. And so sometimes a loss opens your eyes to maybe some things that you didn't realize were as an issue. So then you can correct those things. So there's always a lesson we learned in everything. It's just sometimes you don't know till later. But God has. So that has helped me through some hard times. We've had coach for 30 years. There's going to be some tough losses. And Friday night was a great example of it. And so I also think God keeps you humble.
Yeah, right.
Right.
There can be no other reason except for just I need to help you out here.
Yeah.
Don't think that, I think, we always say when you think your stuff doesn't stink, it's starting to stink. So I think God no one has got a life where everything's going exactly perfect, So I think that's the way of God keeping you grounded as well. And I believe in that too as well.
Yeah.
This has been very generous to take this kind of time in season and stuff, and just some of your thoughts. These have been fantastic and a huge blessing for everybody who's going to hear this podcast. But just we'll be sharing it with our congregation. And thank you for being a part of our church, and for letting your light shine the way that you do. And especially, I have a heart for young people and for pouring into these kids. I imagine that there is somebody who's like my dad.
Yeah.
Who at the end of his life, and he said it in his 50th anniversary video that we made, he didn't live it perfectly.
Right.
But at the end of it, we're talking about a 50-year marriage from a guy who grew up without a dad, and my wife, alcoholic parents, and it's 50 years of God's grace, and learning how to live within that. So thank you that you're hitting guys like my dad, and God knows the seeds that He is using to plant in these kids. So thank you for your time. We appreciate that. And I want to thank you guys for listening in to great questions, great conversations. This was fantastic. And I hope that you are taking notes. I'll probably be watching this one a couple times just to kind of say, oh yeah, I wanted to make sure I got this part down. You can ask us any questions. You'll leave questions or comments in the section if you're on YouTube or if you're on Spotify. But great questions, great conversations. It's a podcast here from St. Paul's and the Bridge in Muskego, Wisconsin. We ask that God bless you and keep you, and we will see you again next time.